Thank you very much for coming to this session. I want to say at the outset that I bring a vast curiosity to this subject, but very little combat experience, and that is a shortcoming that will be remedied, I know, by my very distinguished co-panelists. So let me introduce them. Francis from SAS, Fred from Cloudera, Morden from Cheetah Mobile. I'm very fond of that name. It's a work of genius. And Jason from Google. I wanted to begin from the very sort of fetching advantage of knowing very little about this topic by asking for a succinct definition of what big data is and what's new about it. So maybe one of you can answer that question so we can lay the foundations for what we are discussing today.
Okay, I can go first.
Sure.
I think the internet kind of revolutionized the connectedness of people. I think big data revolutionizes the connectedness of data, all right? And data is the lifeblood of the economy. And the way I see it, lots of the big data environment today that we have, there are so many devices in the environment today, there are like 50 billion devices today, by the year 2020, rising to like 500 billion by the year 2030. So there's going to be lots of data being generated. 5 billion of people in the world today have smartphones, and they're all interacting on data. So there's going to be lots of real-time data. And so big data is an area is a rallying cry. So all of us must pay attention to big data because now we have an opportunity to observe data, to get value out of data, right? So for example, everything that you process today is historical data, but all data starts as an event that occurs on your phone or machinery. It then gets aggregated somewhere, right? And it is moved and it is stored, right? And as data moves through this chain, there's opportunity for us to monetize and make value of the data.
Right.
So I think it's a very exciting area for us, for all of us, across industry.
Right. One of the things that interests me, and I think what would interest the rest of the audience as well, is how big data enables companies to make suggestions about their goods and services and to tailor and customize their goods and services to consumers. And I think maybe the most sort of famous example of this, of course, is the Netflix algorithm, which anticipates what kind of movie or television show you want to watch based on what you've watched before, and probably other browsing data that you're not even fully aware of. Can one of you speak to that and give us another example and tell us how that is making the lives of not only of companies easier, but also consumers?
Yeah, Neel, so I'll go, Jason from Google. So one of the good examples I think we have is Spotify, one of our customers. So there's probably some Spotify users here. Hands up, Spotify users, yeah? So they've rolled out a new feature that's a recommendation for your weekly playlist. So if you've noticed that in the last month or so, it's all built on the back of moving to a cloud model whereby they better understand the listening habits of you and people like you, and then be able to recommend the playlist that suits your style. So, before maybe leveraging some of the cloud technology, they were leveraging a lot of their on-premise data center technology like Hadoop, which is a very powerful product and a great business for Cloudera. But moving to a more of a real-time model can help them understand what their people are listening to now as opposed to what they listened to last week. So it's the faster turnaround for understanding the consumer behavior, tying that to what people of similar
Right.
traits like, and making a recommendation.
I want to sort of do a follow-up question to this because it's, fascinating. So certainly, big data in the examples we've talked about, whether it be Spotify or Netflix, allows companies to anticipate consumer patterns and behaviors based on past consumer patterns and behavior. Now, to what extent does that limit, like, a consumer trying something new? Like, for instance, if suddenly, I'm a, excuse me.
Data shows that you need
If
some water.
if I'm a, a big Oasis fan, and on Spotify, I listen to Oasis, but suddenly I want to try Adele. I mean, how would would the possibility of my listening to somebody like Adele be limited by the kind of technology that you're talking about?
Me or Brad?
Why don't you?
So I think that those are two separate things. So what
Yeah.
you're talking about is that'd be recommendation versus discovery. So a platform like Spotify would allow discovery via search, which is another functionality that can be built on top of big data, whereas they'll also recommend other stuff that may be based on your past history you may have liked. So it accommodates both.
And also the people R&D guys, they developed the algorithm by using lots of correlations. So it could be, for example, there is a good story about Walmart they previously do, like 30 years ago. It's not even the big data era. They found that there is a correlation when you also buy milk, you also buy a few bottles of wines. Because the fact was that shows the guys being ordered by their wives to go to Walmart to buy something together. So they say like cigarette, alcohol, and diapers. So these are all correlated, but you don't know. If you only until you analyze that, you know about it. But here in big data era, we can analyze faster, and found more correlations. That's the beauty about big data. Yeah.
So in other words, you don't feel that it inhibits people from trying anything new, or it funnels people into certain experiences from which they cannot escape, in a sense?
Still people drive.
The answer would be no.
I think with most products, they would offer that the choice of choosing what you've previously listened to, which is based on your history, versus a recommendation. I think obviously it's up to the people to decide whether they're keen to explore the recommendation or go with their own instinct and follow it through to navigating through a Spotify search box as opposed to the recommendation.
Sure.
Sometimes you want discovery mode. Sometimes you want curation mode. That only depends on how the product manager develop the product.
Right. Just sort of on a related topic, which is how big data is collected, and for how long it's collected. Well, Francis and I were talking before the panel began about this very interesting possible decision by the European Union about the right to forget, which is all about protecting privacy. And maybe this is something that you can share with us your thoughts on this.
As more and more of our personal data is being collected, obviously the concerns from a consumer standpoint is I want to make sure that my personal data is being protected and my privacy is being respected. So like in Singapore, I think we have the PDPA Act, which is really looking at how we can govern the collection of your personal data, the use by private organizations, and also the disclosure, when are you allowed to use that personal information, right, in a reasonable manner, right? I think in the EU, they have taken another step further. The General Data Protection Regulation that is coming in force in EU by May of next year, basically is even more strict. It dwells on the aspect that you as an individual, you are allowed to own your own data, right? So in the EU regulation, you almost have a right to force any organization to actually forget your data. So if an organization has been collecting your information, you as an individual, you own your own personal data, you can actually demand that the organization removes your data. Basically forget about you completely, right?
And how is that done? Maybe I can ask you, Fred, how will that be achieved? Meaning, how do you achieve the right to forget? I mean, we've all probably sort of cleared our browsers, which is, I'm sure, a very simple means of doing that. But maybe you can tell us, like, how do you achieve this right to forget?
Well, first of all, I'm definitely not an expert on information governance or security, but from my company's perspective, we try to provide every one of our customers the flexibility to kind of adhere to their whatever government or industry guidelines they have, and agree with Francis, they definitely are changing. So I would focus there on the flexibility, ability to anonymize data sets as well. I think anonymization is probably the largest tool people use to kind of collect large-scale data, gain insights, but also respect the privacy of their customers.
Right.
Yeah.
What impact do you think this would have on big technology companies, particularly operating in Asia? You know, if something similar to this were adopted, and it would be, of course, very difficult because it would have to be done on a country-to-country basis. There's no equivalent of a European Union. So what do you think the impact would be?
Well, like you said, it'd have to be done on a country-by-country basis, but there's a large opportunity in Asia, and I think there's a lot of companies that are willing to invest in that way. So at the end of the day, I think people will go where the opportunity is, and if they need to make case-by-case exceptions, it'll be done in that manner.
Right.
Yeah.
Morden, did you want to add something?
So there's an observation that I would love to share a little bit is about people in Europe. They care about, it's not only the law itself, it's the people. They care that privacy piece pretty much view it as a very important piece. I mean, I don't know why or what's the rationale behind it. I don't have those things. I have the data shows that. I have the report shows that that's the case. Well, in Asia, especially in emerging countries, that kind of thing is not yet there yet. That's not just my feeling. That's by the survey, by the report says. So I kind of feel that this piece of privacy protection is a demand, but it's not that a strong demand yet for many emerging countries here, which also means it allows the ecosystem, each vendors or each part of the player in this ecosystem more freedom to start something differently. It might not be illegal in the beginning.
Right.
Yeah. So that's my observation.
So you think it has to do partly with a cultural issue, that these concerns are not as heightened here as they might be in Europe?
It's one thing. It's also about legal-wise, that's a regulation has not been set yet. And also I saw lots of people, they adapt all the devices that connects everything, that connect your data, your heartbeat, your everything to the cloud easily. They love it, especially when people start from the younger generation here. Our user base here, we have lots of people like from 18 to 30 years old. That's our user base here in the APAC area. They enjoy using our apps. They enjoy using this and that, every kind of connected devices. They just love it. So when they sign off or when they buy that, they basically agrees that these data are yours. So that's my
What do you think, Jason? I mean, obviously, Google is probably, in very general terms, the largest repository of everyone's data. What do you think about this issue?
Well, I think I represent cloud platforms, so it's more about us helping our customers store their data on Google's cloud. yes, we are the data processor, but the customer remains the custodian of the data. So if they want to delete their data, we comply with that request. Um, going back to your point around the collection of data, I think one of the things we're trying to get away from is throwing away data that could be very, very valuable down the track. Okay, so if you can collect, ingest, analyze the data, it's going to serve you well in the long run, and particularly in the area of machine learning, whereby you need vast amounts of data to train deep neural nets. So one thing that we as Google are going through right now is pretty much a huge transformation of our own services and products to better adjust to this machine learning world.
Right.
And what enables us to provide great services like Google Photos is the ability to learn from huge amounts of data that is available and people use. So throwing away data because it was maybe costly in the past or you didn't know what you wanted to do with it in the future is a mistake, I would say. With cloud storage being super cheap these days, there's different storage mechanisms for you to choose based on how fast you need the retrieval of the data. It helps a lot with keeping that data around and plugging it into more advanced models to help you make predictions on better products or services that you want to offer to your consumers.
Right. I mean, so we've dwelt a little bit on sort of the negative aspects, so we should rightly dwell on some of the positive aspects, which, just speaking from my perspective, ink media in all of its forms in the magazine, which I hope some of you have read and enjoyed and picked up at the front, on the web and through our events and our videos. We're very focused on startups and entrepreneurs. In fact, it is the world's leading media brand for entrepreneurs, for startups. And one of the things that we've noticed is that the things that were normally forbidden or at least inaccessible because of price to entrepreneurs, to startups, like the large IT services and goods that an entrepreneur or a startup simply couldn't afford before, they now can afford, largely through the kind of developments that have been facilitated by big data and by the cloud. Can one of you speak to this? Because it seems to me like a huge, almost revolutionary thing.
Yeah, so,
Fred, yes.
I mean, I'd speak and then probably pass it off to Jordan. So yeah, the concept of machine learning is absolutely not new. So there were a professor named Terry Weingart in the 1970s who did some of the first experiments with machine learning, and actually your founders were students of his, I believe. But one of the advents of the cloud has provided basically access to compute on a scale where it's become more economical to crunch these machine learning activities. And then on top of that, something that Cloudera has been more involved in, I would say, would be the democratization of algorithms through open source. So that's another component, whereas if you want to have access to a Netflix-like recommendation engine now, it's not something where you necessarily have to build it from scratch. These are things that are available in open source that you have access to. And with cloud computing, you're able to store this data sets very cheaply and then process that. And if it fails initially, that's great. You shut it down, you reorganize, and you can do it again later. So that's how I think.
That's fascinating. Can you just talk a little bit more about that? I mean, this democratization of algorithms. How does one? The Netflix algorithm obviously is state of the art, and it's the result of a lot of years of work and investment. How does one, if you're a startup, access it?
Well, I mean, that's the cool thing about it. So initially, I think in Silicon Valley, a lot of innovation happened in silos. So you had large, stalwart companies that were developing their own technology for internal use that they would then bring to the market. Well, with the advent of open source, though, you see lots of companies, Netflix, Google, eBay, Cloudera, that are contributing to the open source ecosystem, not holding on to the code themselves, and allowing the globe to contribute to that. So that's what I mean by the democratization of algorithms and technology.
And have you seen smaller companies, smaller startups benefiting from this?
Absolutely. I think if you talk to the vast majority of people running on top of whether it's Amazon or Google, a lot of them are running open source operating systems and then open source database as well. So I think initially a lot of those guys will start out with that, and where Cloudera comes in is once they've gotten to an enterprise scale, we provide support for those projects that we're incubating.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
I think one good example of that is Snapchat. Any Snapchat users here? Take selfies? Here? No?
I take selfies.
So Snapchat started off on, with very little, if any, infrastructure. They didn't know how successful they were going to be. And they're just growing tremendously. Now they have 100 million users. They don't have a data center. They don't have any servers. They're just 40, 50 guys. They've got maybe 10 or so sysadmins who look after a lot of managed services, which serves billions of videos and pictures a day. So it's quite a good example of how I'm not sure if they expected how popular they were going to be, and how could they forecast what they needed in advance. How could they budget for the infrastructure that they required. They didn't have to. They just grew on the platform.
What does that mean for companies? I'm just curious. I mean, companies that have, obviously, large companies that have developed these hugely innovative, landmark, sort of life-changing technologies like Snapchat, or even Instagram, which was, I think it's sort of its predecessor, right? Or WhatsApp. Does the lead time for technology and innovation become ever shorter?
Well, I think if you're still dealing with infrastructure, then you are behind the curve. So certainly we would prefer to help customers go to a more of a no-ops model, whereby a lot of cloud managed services, native services can provide you with the scalability that you need to grow your business when you need it. Another good example is Pokemon Go, Niantic. So again, any Pokemon Go users here? So they certainly did not expect the launch they had. So it's well documented, I think, on the web that their worst case was 50 times less than the traffic they experienced on launch.
Right.
So they did all their capacity planning. It was only the fact that they were running off a managed service that allowed them to scale automatically to cope with the demand that they did not expect. So it's low. If they had been managing that with their own infrastructure or at the VM level, then they simply could not have coped with their success.
I have a few other examples. I'm a Taiwanese. I have been working in China for the past 8 years, and last year I came to Singapore. But during the past several years in China, I'll say that before 2010, most of the Chinese entrepreneurs in internet industry, they focus on China only. And you rarely hear any China local internet service goes overseas. But starting from 2011, the things started to change. Okay, people start to build a service using either Google Play or Apple's App Store to get more users, and they are, I'll say 99% of all these entrepreneurs, they are adapting either this cloud or that cloud or that cloud. Because that's the only way they can speed the whole thing up, and doesn't need to doesn't have to be to set as a boundary, okay, because of the infra is not ready. So they expand. It's just like a turnkey solution. I want to expand. I expand. Easy, simple and easy. So take Cheetah Mobile as an example. Ourselves, we actually started whole international business. Started from end of 2012. But by end of 2015, just 3 years, we grew from 0 users to 600 million users worldwide, without the whole data support infra. These are all like say thanks for Google and the Amazon guy that is not here. But yes, thank you guys. That's how the whole things get speeded up a lot.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very important thing to have such a service in there.
And I guess at SaaS, we've recently invested about $1 billion to build a new modern analytical infrastructure, basically allowing a lot of the startups to leverage machine learning and AI as well. And a lot of big enterprises want to accommodate that because I think the enterprises are comfortable handling structured data, but for the unstructured data, they need another kind of platform, right? And so the startups have already done a lot of work in terms of developing algorithms, writing in languages like R and Python and so forth. So when we approached it, we looked at it and said, how do we find a good way that we can satisfy the startups and also link them up to the enterprises which have the monetization value, right? So we built a platform called Via that basically allows programmers to write in languages of their choice and deploy it on our environment. It also is cloud ready, so it works with the Amazons, the Google, and so forth. So it's easy for startups to, take it to the next step. And also provide a set of reliable machine learning and AI kind of capabilities.
Right.
So I think with that kind of effort, that's one part of it, is the technology side. Another thing that's probably important in this world is how do we skill up people, right? As in Singapore, we are short of data scientists and so forth. So we've also embarked on working with IMDA to build a company-led training kind of program, which has been running in Singapore for 5 years. So in the next 3 years, we want to double the kind of intake as well. So you need the people with the knowledge, you need a platform, and where the enterprises can help startups is they are in the business of logistics or banking and so forth. They can bring the right business problems, and together with the right talent and the right infrastructure, I think that's where you can scale up the ideas, because most of the time, the challenge for startups is they have a great idea, but they cannot scale up the solution. So I think that's where we need an ecosystem where enterprises, together with the government, together with people wanting to retrain themselves, can come together. And I think Singapore can do it quite uniquely because we are small.
Sure.
And there's a lot of concerted effort to retrain the professionals in this area as well.
Yes. I just want to, this has been a fascinating discussion, most of all for me, because I've learned quite a lot. I want to sort of close this panel by, in some ways, circling back to a topic that we touched on but didn't really dwell on, which is, what are the limitations of big data? I mean, at which point do companies know too much? Is there such a limitation? And how do we find it? I mean, if there is such a line, where is it drawn?
I think I can speak to maybe some of the technical limitations of analytics. With the growth of data sets available today, it's almost at the case where there's so much data to troll through that it's difficult to define the right analytics to go after. That's where machine learning comes in terms of it being able to apply deep neural networks to figure out the patterns in data for you. The problem with that is, and this is driving data scientists crazy at the moment, is that the deep neural nets do not tell them why they did that. So the data scientists are always after the why. The neural nets don't tell them the answer, and they're trying to reverse engineer what the neural networks did. So I guess that's an area of focus for data scientists at the moment. I guess it's a limitation of machine learning. The good news is you will get a good predictive answer if you tune your model correctly. The bad news is sometimes you won't know why.
Right. Would you like to, anyone else want to add?
I think the challenge today in big data is that we're collecting a lot of data, but not analyzing it enough. So I think a large proportion of the data that we collect, we do not really are getting the right insights and be able to take some actions out of it. But I do agree, like, with big data, we are basically trying to find a needle in a haystack. So I think we need to rethink the way we, handle such an environment. I think the data has got a lot of value in there. I think we need to analyze it better. And as I was saying earlier, I think we need to bring the analysis and the understanding closer to where the data is being created. So if the data is being captured on a sensor somewhere, we need the analytics and the intelligence to be acting on it at the same speed at which it is coming out of the sensor, right? So we kind of need to bring the analysis at the right point, right?
Right.
So bringing the analysis to the edge, so to speak, and then connecting it all the way back to a central site is probably important. So you can have intelligence at the sensor end, which is very rudimentary.
Yeah.
And then at the back end, when you have aggregated the data over time, you can apply the right machine learning and artificial intelligence to bring out things that you can do better in the longer run. So I think if you are able to better analyze the data,
Right.
and get the value and the insights out of it, I think that would be an important first step. I don't think there's any limitation in big data, so to speak, because I think the new algorithms that we're coming up with will tend to be able to look at data and find insights much more efficiently than a data scientist could.
So, okay, so there used to be a pretty academic definition of big data. Was the big data different from all the previously data is all about? There are 4 V's. They say velocity, they say variety, they say volume, and the last one is called value. Okay, so that's the 4 V. I forgot who defines that. It's either a professor or McKinsey. I really forget. Anyway, but well, that makes some points. So that's the difference between what we talk about big data and previous data analysis or big data analysis. But these 4 V's, what brings my attention is the last one, value. So I wouldn't say there's a limitation, because if we do the things well, if we do everything well, there should be lots of value. But there are lots of data, but it's just not that easy to find valuable ones, or comparatively valuable ones. We are now contributing and consuming tons of data daily. We watch something, so okay, for example, we have a product called News Republic, so it predicts what you like to read, basically. That's what we do. We use algorithm, we collect what your reading patterns, then we understand what you like to read, and we give you more things you like to read, so you don't even need to search for the piece of information. I use my own thing, and it generally figures out that I love NBA. I don't like MLB or something else, but I like NBA, so it pushes lots of NBA, yeah, to me. But okay, so it understand I love NBA news, and then it start to push me the sports shoes. But it doesn't really understand that I don't need a basketball shoe, because I do jogging, I do running. I need a running shoe instead of a basketball shoe. Okay, but so it knows this, but doesn't know that, and these hasn't been correlated or connected, so then that piece of data is not valuable enough. So yeah, if we do the whole thing right, or I don't know how to say that, but maybe by a few years later, I think all these could be solved. So then the big data solution could be more valuable, and these data become very valuable. But for now, I will say that it's not a limitation, it's just the time is not there yet. Okay, so there are lots of values are still buried there, and it will soon happen. And I believe that everybody in this room you are either investor or a technology company, something. So we'll figure out together.
So the challenge is in extracting the value.
But challenges people. We need more people, no more talents. So
Right.
yeah, we have NUS here, we have NTU here, and we have a lot of university professors here. And working with like company and the university, the research, different organization working together, I think the things start speeded up, at least a little bit.
Right. Well, thank you so much for coming. I will close this really interesting panel with a nod to Jason, because I learned just a few moments ago that he was from Ireland. So there's a lovely line from Yeats that in one of the poems that he wrote to his unrequited sort of lover, Maud Gunn, which it's a lovely line. It's I weep because I know all things now, and I sort of feel that way right at this moment. But it's also an allusion to big data and its power. So thank you very much for coming.